Hi, this is Jeff with the Create Today channel. Today I'm going to show you how to smooth shapes in Photoshop. We're going to take something like this, simple shape made up of circles. We're going to smooth it until it looks something like this. We're also going to look at this image. Again, simple shape created with circles in Adobe Illustrator, brought into Photoshop, and then we're going to smooth it and make it look like this. And lastly, we're going to take a look at some text, some rather blocky text that we're going to smooth, and it's going to look a little more like this when we're done. So why don't we go ahead and get started. Okay, let's start with this shape here. This is a simple shape I created in Adobe Illustrator with some circles, brought it into Photoshop, and now I have that shape on a layer here floating above a white background. What we want to do with this shape first, I'm going to hold down my command key and click on that layer right here, control key if you're on a PC, and that loads it as a selection. You see the little marching ants here. Now I want to make sure I'm in a selection tool, which I am, but if you're not, you can pick one of your selection tools. And then we're going to roll over into the middle of any area within the selection. Out here it wouldn't work. In here it does. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Save Selection. Need to name that selection. I'm going to call it Clean. You can call it whatever you want. And hit OK. Now I can deselect. And let's go to our Channels palette. You'll see our new channel that we just created from that selection. So basically we took the selection, saved it, it became a new channel here. So you see it's kind of the inverse of what we had on the Layers palette. Now we have white on black. What's white will load as a selection, what's black will not. Now we want to start doing the smoothing. So we're going to take this image here that's all hard edged, definitely not real smooth other than the fact that it's circles. And we're going to come up here and do Filter, and we're going to go to Blur and then Gaussian Blur. You can set different amounts of blur. The more blur, the more smoothing is going to occur. For this particular shape here, I think I'm going to try about 40 pixels. So it blurs it quite a bit, and you can already start to see that shape that we were talking about getting to. So let's go with 40 pixels. Of course, it depends on the resolution of your image as well. Lower resolution will require less pixels blur. Higher, more. Let's click OK. So now we have this shape here that we blurred, and you're like, well, okay, it does look different, it does look smooth, but it's blurry. Next step is to pull up your levels. I'm going to move my levels over here, and we're going to start dragging on these little triangles here. This is the shadow end of it, this is the highlight end of it. So I'm going to start with the shadow end, and I'm going to start pulling that in, and you'll see this shape start to change. It's kind of slimming it down, if you will. See, here's where we were, kind of slimming it down, and you can decide how much you want to do. Now I'm going to grab the highlight here and pull it to the left, and that'll kind of fatten it up. What we're doing is getting rid of that gray fuzzy part around the outside of the shape. Okay, so you can play with this until you're happy with the results. Our goal here is to end up with a white against black shape, none of that fuzzy edge stuff, so that we can load it as a selection. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this preview box here. That's what we had. That's what we have now. I'm going to hit OK. So now we have this shape. We're going to go ahead and load it as a selection by command clicking on the channel, or control click on a PC. So you see we've loaded that as a selection. Let's go back to our RGB. Let's go back to our layers. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off that original layer. And I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to fill that with a color. In this case, I think I'll fill it with the black from the default colors here. I'm going to hold my Option Delete and fill it with black, or Alt Delete on a PC. And I can deselect. So now you see our original shape right here, and our smooth shape. Okay, now let's take a look at this other design. This was made up of a bunch of circles in Adobe Illustrator, brought into Photoshop on a layer here. It's just floating above a white background, just like the other one. We're going to go ahead and command click on this layer, or control click if you're on a PC. That loads it as a selection. Wherever there's pixels, it's going to load as a selection. Make sure you're in a selection tool now, and we're going to right click within that selection. We're going to select Save Selection. Name it something, hit OK. Now we can deselect, and let's go to our channels palette. There's the new channel created from the selection. Now we're once again going to go up here to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. It's set at 40 pixels because that was the last time we used it on the last piece of art. I kind of like that, and I think I'm just going to stick with that. Okay, let's bring up our levels again. Once again, we're going to pull on the shadow side a bit, kind of thin things down. We're going to come over here to the highlight side. We're going to pull to the left, fatten things up a little bit, maybe a little bit more on the shadow side to the right. We're just smoothing away those gray pixels where the thing was blurred and trying to get white on black, basically. So that looks pretty good. I think I'm going to go with that. Click OK, and there we go. We have our shape. I can go ahead and command click on that channel, load it as a selection. I can go up here to, so we're back in RGB, we'll click right there. Go to our layers. Let's turn off that piece of art that wasn't blurred and smooth, and let's create a new layer right here. I'm going to fill it with black. Just Option Delete or Alt Delete on a PC. Now I can deselect. And look, there's our smooth shape. Let's look at the original and smooth shape. It's a cool shape. I've used this shape for several different pieces of artwork. We can get into those in another tutorial sometime. Okay, now that we've smoothed a couple of different pieces of artwork, let's take a look at smoothing some text. I'm going to come over here to this blank document that I have. I'm going to grab my type tool, and I've set my font to Rockwell Extra Bold, which is a big blocky font. You'll have to work with what you have on your system, find something that works for you, but basically we're looking for a font that's kind of squared off, not very smooth, and will work good for this smoothing process. I've also set my size to 300 points. Again, it'll depend on the resolution of your document, but we want some big type that we can see here to work with. So I've set it to center the type, and I'm going to click right here in the middle, and I'm just going to type Create Today and hit enter on my keyboard here. I'm going to grab my move tool and kind of move this up, just kind of center it vertically there. Now we're going to come to our layer with the new type. We're going to command click on that layer or control click on a PC, and again that will load that type as a selection. I want to make sure I'm in a selection tool, so you can come up here or you can hit M on the keyboard to get this selection tool. Go into the middle of the selection and right click, Save Selection. Gonna deselect, gonna go to our channels palette, and there's our new channel based on that selection. I'm gonna get rid of these center guides that I had here, and once again we're gonna blur. Just gonna follow that same process. I'm gonna come down to Blur, Gaussian Blur. Now we had 40 pixels last time. That's an awful lot for this particular type here, so I think I'm gonna back that off. Let's try maybe 10. You don't want to totally blow the whole thing out, but you want to have nice soft edges, enough that that's going to be able to curve and smooth. So in this case I think 10 will probably work pretty good. Gonna hit OK, and let's bring up our levels palette, and we're gonna grab the shadow side and kind of pull it in. Look at that, how it's starting to smooth out. Look at that. We don't want to lose things like that where it gets too thin and disappears. So I'm going to grab my highlight side, pull it to the left, kind of fatten that up a little bit. See, isn't that looking cool? We'll grab the shadow side again a little bit until we get just a nice, clean, crisp, smoothed piece of type. I think I'll go with that. Hit OK. Let's command click on that channel again to load it as a selection. We'll go back to RGB in the channels palette. Let's go to layers. We'll turn off our original type and we're going to make a new layer and we're going to fill that. So I'm going to fill with black by doing Option Delete or Alt Delete on a PC, and then I'm going to deselect. Okay, there's our smooth type. So you can see how different that looks. Let's turn that off, turn the original back on. Look how sharp edged and blocky. Nice typeface, but it's not smooth. So let's look at our smooth type. Quite a difference. Okay, I hope you had fun learning how to smooth artwork and type and different shapes in Photoshop. You can use this process for a lot of creative effects. I've used it for many years and I continue to use it today to create organic, smooth shapes that I can further embellish as I'm creating my artwork. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please click the like button and be sure to subscribe so you can get the latest videos I post here at the Create Today channel. Thanks again for watching.